Welcome to Politics Done Right on KPFT. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Give me a call at 713-526-5738. That is 713-526-KPFT. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you for being with me for this 1 hour. You know I do appreciate the time that you give us, the opportunity that you give us to give you real information and news that you won't get anywhere else. You won't get it on the mainstream media or by the mainstream media. Please do remember, folks, this is a call-in show. The telephone number is 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. Now, today I have an interesting guest for you. It's going to be Tim Danahey coming in from Danahey.com, Anyhow, let me tell you, when Senator Tom Cotton and 46 other Republicans attempted to sabotage the negotiations between the U.S. and the 5.1 nations and Iran, they expected to cut the feet from under the president. It has since backfired. Only their most ardent supporters think it was a good idea. The infantile wording of the letter showed a party that is not only in decline ideologically, but a party whose leadership is intellectually deficient. Rank and file Republicans deserve much better. They need to take their party back. While we will talk about Iran tonight, we will expand on how this type of action materially affects us all. So, folks, do you know what time it is?
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Well, folks, I call it today, whether it is Iran or Venezuela, it is always about war and oil. War and oil. The more things change, the more they seem to stay the same. Last week, we had 47 United States Republican senators subsequently referred to as 47 traitors, unconstitutionally inject themselves into our nation's foreign policy. They signed on to an infantile letter written by Arkansas Junior Senator Tom Cotton to the mullahs with the purpose of teaching them the intricacies of the United States Constitution. It is understood that sometimes otherwise intelligent politicians say silly things for the purpose of getting elected. Effecting policy or action, those silly action things can be disastrous. It can be disastrous specifically when politicians start to believe their rhetoric. The Iranians summarily dismissed the letter. More embarrassing is that the senators in signing the letter showed they themselves did not quite understand neither the Constitution nor the jurisdiction of the results of the negotiation. The Iranians subsequently schooled the Republicans on the error of their understandings of the Constitution. The letter may, however, be used as a bargaining chip to extract more from the U.S. based on the bad faith of the senators. Americans must not be fooled. The expectation of the 47 senators is to do the job of their masters. A deal with Iran is an existential threat to the profits of the military-industrial complex. Many of these senators in the past attempted to use ISIS, also known as ISIL, to force America into another war to prop up the military-industrial complex. ISIL, that big bad monster that was more hype than substance, is in retreat. No matter how much they attempt to make it an existential threat to the U.S., it never was. It never was. Americans must come to the realization that it is all about cause and effect. It is always about war for oil. It is always about conflict for oil. We either have war or we have oil. Either way, there are profits to be made. Our real conflict with Iran occurred because we overthrew their democratically elected leader way yonder, 1953, way yonder, folks. This didn't start now. They expect us not to know the reality of what goes on. They expect us not to know. The oil company, now known as British Petroleum, lost its stronghold on Iranian oil. The British and the Americans would have none of it. They inserted the dictator, the Shah of Iran, until people rose up with innocent Americans caught in between. Americans must know the history before we blindly decide that war with Iran is morally right. The Iranians have more to fear from us than we from them. Listen to that statement again. The Iranians have more to fear from us than we from them. We demean ourselves when we give Iran the power because somehow they are an existential threat. They have never been an existential threat to the United States of America, ever. One should note that America is playing the same game in Venezuela. Venezuela is sitting on top of one of the largest reserves of oil, if not the largest in the world. Yet, most in the country are poor. The only folks that got rich off the oil was the Venezuelan plutocracy and foreign companies. They willed then Hugo Chavez, into existence, and now Nicolas Maduro, to effect some sort of Bolivian revolution to attempt to bring some sort of redistribution that was of what was actually stolen. America does not approve. President Obama has declared that Venezuela poses an extraordinary threat to the national security of the United States. Do you get the picture? The Republicans will undercut the president in Iran. Any bets on whether they will support President Obama on his very large misstep in Venezuela? Who knows? Well, I'd like to bring my guest in. Tim Danahey is on line number 6. Tim Danahey, please come on in. How are you doing, my friend?
To be on your show.
Excellent. How you doing, Tim?
I am doing well. I appreciate the blog that you've written, and you really have brought up some interesting subjects, and I think it's especially relevant that you tie in Venezuela and Iran, because the drumbeats for oil, truthfully, are getting louder and louder, and the justifiability of it certainly is being called into question at a much higher level.
Look, Tim, let me tell you something first. First, let's do the proper introduction here, folks. You are now listening to Tim Danahey from the Tim Danahey Show. Tim Danahey has a wonderful show on Danahey.com. You must go to Danahey.com and listen to all the different guests that he have. He knows the material, and that's one of the reasons I really wanted to have him here on this particular subject. So, Tim, moving on to Iran. Let's start with the letter. Tell me what grabbed you the first you heard of us having 47 senators who had the gall to do what they did.
Well, the first thing that grabbed me on that is the impropriety of it and the fact that it was originally drafted by a 37-year-old freshman senator who's been in office for about 60 days. And one would think that perhaps a Lindsey Graham or a John McCain or someone would have been there to counsel him to say, no, you can't do this because it's a violation of the Logan Act of 1799. It's illegal, and it's been held up by the Supreme Court as illegal because the Logan Act allows the president specifically the powers to speak as a representative of the United States. So whenever there's talk of traitors and indictments and so forth, it's because these 47 senators have, in the letter of the law, violated the Logan Act. That being said, we certainly don't want to bring senators to court on such charges. I think that would be counterproductive, but I think they do need to be put in their place as being out of line and undermining not only the United States, but we're negotiating this as part of
5+1
a group of people of 5 other nations.
Right. It is amazing to me. It is amazing to me that, yes, most of the columnists, most of the journalists have not complained, but they've criticized this particular act. But what still gets to me is that I think if this had occurred on the other side, if Democrats had done something of this sort, I think it would be something running ad nauseum. And I think, and it wouldn't have had to be this or this big of an act to have gone that way. Now, they're doing it as if it's just a nuisance, not realizing that this stuff has a material effect on the average American citizen. And I want to cover that. But what people don't understand is, I don't know if you listen to what I mentioned earlier in the blog, where I actually stated that before we rush into war, before we rush into demonizing Iran, and again, I'm not here to defend Iran or any other country for that matter, it is important that we know the history. And I think very few people really understand the history of Iran. And look, while I was writing the blog, I knew about 1953, and I knew about us overthrowing the Shah of Iran. It's not necessary to go back to way back to the Ottoman empires and all these different things that went on in Iran to simply know that these are a people with a culture. And I think it is short-sighted on our side to believe that just as we believe here in America that we have our values, that we have these things that we cherish, that they as well won't. What say you?
Oh, absolutely. I have many friends who are from Iran who have actually protested against the United States, and they tell the humorous story of how when the cameras are on, everybody in Iran knows to stand and shout death to America and clench their fists and wave them. But when the camera's off, they just go back to drinking Cokes and wondering how they can go buy their Nikes down at the store. It's strictly a media campaign. There is no animosity towards the United States, except perhaps by the Basiji, who are the thugs hired by the hardline right-wingers of Iran to kind of create a police state of sorts. But there is no popular support for the regime in Iran. But the United States has shot themselves in the foot for all negotiating purposes with that letter to them. It's totally counterproductive.
Right. Now, I tell you what, to the audience here at large and anyone listening on the internet, I think it's important for Americans to get engaged. I mean, one of the things that we did during the Iraq War as a society, and both Terry and William, I'm coming to you as soon as we're done with this beginning dialogue. One of the things that we did during the ramp up to the Iraq War, Tim, is that we stayed disengaged. So a lot of actions took place. As that we couldn't turn around afterwards because most of the Americans weren't involved in seeing the buildup. One of the reasons I brought in Venezuela here, and it's early to bring in Venezuela, but was to look at the wording of what the president said. The president has started to make Venezuela, the occurrences in Venezuela, as you know, Venezuela has over time has nationalized the oil industry, and in effect, we have a tendency to believe that all the oil in this hemisphere is ours. I know there are a lot of people who are going to complain about that statement that I just made, but, you know, they're sitting on a bunch of oil, and we don't like that Senor Maduro is the one who really is in charge of all that oil. So when President Obama says that that is a security risk for the United States of America, are you kidding me? And no, it didn't make. I watched the 5 o'clock news, the 5:30 news. It didn't make the news. The ramp up that we've seen in Iran, the ramp up that we've seen in Iraq. Now we're seeing the type of wording starting to be used in Venezuela. Americans have to really start getting engaged, because we have to engage before it gets too late. Before they've started the show 2 hours before this mentioned how we got into Iraq. It mentioned how these guys actually said, it doesn't matter what the evidence is saying, we're going in. So before I take a call, I just want to get you to respond, Tim, and then I'm going to take a couple of calls.
Well, it's wise to bring Venezuela into the discussion, because the truth of the matter is the economic fundamentals of Venezuela are quite good. They have a trade surplus, they have a current account surplus. And if you take a look at who is protesting in Venezuela, it is not the poverty-ridden areas. They're typically more upscale. And so President Maduro still has a broad support, and he actually operates one of the most democratic societies in the world, where the citizens get to vote even down at the local levels about who their trash collectors will be, and they work their way up from there. As for shortages of goods, there's increasing evidence, as reported by Roar Magazine very well, there's increasing evidence that a lot of the basics that they say there are shortages are being found over the border in Colombia, like they're being trucked out of Venezuela and over the border to create artificial shortages. There is not a complete story being reported there. I do not know what the complete story is, but I am not satisfied with President Obama's statement on that.
Absolutely. As somebody who's from that part of the world, I understand exactly what they're doing. I mean, we like to claim democracy here in the United States, but we hate dealing with democratic leaders abroad, because we want to deal with one person and have them do the dirty job. But Tim, let me bring Terry onto the line. Terry, you're hot, my friend. Come on in. By the way, folks, we may have a little bit of a delay in doing a few things, because we have Benedice, who is our new engineer, and Bob, who is also, come on, Bob, say your hey, you're my engineer for the day. Let me hear it, Bob.
Okay. How's it going? Woo!
There you go. 2 new engineers. Amazing. But anyway, Terry, come on in. Say your piece.
Hey, Soto, how you doing, man?
Great, sir. Talk to me.
Well, I think it's interesting, obviously, to take on Iran, but I am probably going to be in a smaller majority than you are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see the rush to prevent Iran from getting a bomb. In fact, I'd like to have Iran have one. I'd like to have Iraq have a couple. I'd like to have Syria have a few, because, as has been demonstrated ad nauseum, having the bomb means you don't get invaded. And who's the only country who's been invading people here, I don't know, within the last 10 years or so?
Yes.
Other than Russia.
And the place we didn't go to is North Korea, who has the bomb, right?
Right. We didn't go to North Korea. We didn't go to Turkey when we were really upset with them over housing Osama bin Laden. We don't really get involved in...
You meant Pakistan.
I'm sorry, that's correct. We don't really involve ourselves with Pakistan. Turkey has a bomb. We don't really get into their business too much. And under no circumstances do we display any overt aggression toward them. So as far as I'm concerned, having the bomb makes this world safer in that it tends to mitigate aggression by superpowers.
Well, let me add a little bit to that, Terry, and then I'll bring Tim in. But here's what I want to say. There is only one country on this planet that has shown the wherewithal to use the atomic bomb on other human beings. Okay? There is only one country that has ever done that, and we live in it. Okay? We don't know, for all the fear that we have on all these other countries, the rest of the world knows that it's only one country that has ever used the bomb on other human beings. Now, you can go ahead and give all kinds of reasons. We saved lives by letting the bomb go in Nagasaki and Hiroshima because we would have saved many more lives than invading. Look, that's fine, but the absolute fact is that's the only thing that we know. Secondly, we also know that Israel has a bomb. Now, if we really believe in honest negotiations, shouldn't we bring Israel into those discussions as well? Tim, I'll lay that off to you, sir.
Well, the theory of mutually assured destruction, has kind of kept peace between the superpowers for a number of years, but being able to control the spread and let's just say the of nuclear weapons. For example, in Pakistan, one of our big fears is to be able to keep their nuclear weapons under the control of the government, considering so many of their outlying territories where the nuclear weapons are kept are not under strong control. But, Terry, brings up a point. But Warren Buffett, I believe, and definitely it was Ted Turner involved with this, they offered to fund a world bank of power plant grade uranium, where anybody in the world who wanted to have nuclear power could just simply go to this bank and withdraw or buy sufficient uranium, and they would not need to do enriching in their own countries. Now, that would be the ideal control over nuclear centrifuges and so forth, but for some reason, that idea has never taken off as part of U.S. foreign policy.
They don't want that, Tim. I mean, the thing about it is we really want policies to keep a defense industry afloat. And many of these, peace is not a good thing for...
I'm still alive.
What's that, Terry?
Oh, I didn't know if I was still alive. Listen, I just wanted to say something right quick.
Go ahead.
I'm not personally attacking your guest.
No, I know.
It's beyond time for the West to give up the notion of the ability to control other nation states. We would not tolerate for a microsecond if any other nation state dictated or mandated that we move off of whatever to whatever else. So why in God's name, and I don't believe in God as you know, Alberto, but why in God's name would we dictate and demand that other countries follow our perspectives? We need to stop this silly-ass manifest destiny that we can control other nation states and other people's lives.
Terry, I have to agree with that, and I'm pretty sure. I want Tim to respond to that, though, because that's a very good point that you brought up. Tim?
I would hope that perhaps we could take these kinds of opportunities to try and teach other countries not to make the same mistake that we have, and to develop there's 200 nations to develop 200 nations that spend over half of their national budgets on defense spending. We've taken it so far that...
But my question is...
One at a time, Terry. Let him finish.
Okay, but wait. If it's such a mistake, then why are we still holding on to all of our nukes?
Look, I agree. I absolutely agree that if we have the right to have nukes, others should have the right as well. Now, that is my position. Not everybody holds that position. And I don't know I'm not sure what Tim's position is if Tim is saying that he's suggesting that, or is he saying by the gun they must not? I don't know. Which one are you saying, Tim?
Well, I'm saying that the United States has acknowledged, even as recent as the Reagan years, the need to reduce the amount of nuclear weapons, and Russia has agreed. The negotiations at Reykjavik were a rare moment in U.S. diplomacy where the two sides were competing to reduce their nuclear arsenals. That kind of peace initiative, I wish, could be continued, but unfortunately we seem to have lost track of that objective. And so we need to relearn that lesson again, and I would hope that the rest of the world will follow. There's nothing to be gained by increasing the number of nuclear weapons around the world. Of course, they have the right, but with the right is the responsibility, and I question the responsible nature of several world states.
Okay, I'm going to go into that a little bit more, but I want to bring some more folks into the conversation. So I put Terry on a permanent hold for me, and let's bring in William. What I mean by that is, Terry, don't hang up on Terry. Okay, come on in, William. William? Remember, folks, there we go, William. Come on in.
Hello?
Yes, come on in, William.
Hi. I was just calling to see if I could get your opinion on what do you think is going to happen with oil prices.
My opinion, I don't know that it's worth much, but let me first tell you a few thoughts that I have about oil.
All right.
I believe that our rates are contrived. I believe that the rates are down right now to put 3 countries in their place.
Iran.
Russia, Iran, and Venezuela. Okay? Mm-hmm. In other words, I think these prices are first of all, I think these prices are fluid. In other words, there's no market here. And first of all, it's another show that I've been thinking about another show, but it doesn't cover the subject today. There isn't a market. There's no real market out there, but we'll discuss that on another show.
Can you just go in a little bit more detail about what you mean by there's no market out there?
Okay, Americans have this false belief that this invisible thing called the market works. And the only people that can really believe that are those that are fooled into believing that the way our current capitalist system is set up, that everyone has the opportunity because the market is invisible and it's only based on not only a meritocracy, but the ability to get capital individually. And none of that is true. But like I said, it's a very complex, it's not complex at all. It's actually an easy issue. We have just been brainwashed into believing otherwise, that there's some market out there that, works with supply and first of all, let me just qualify what I'm saying. Supply and demand does work. Okay, that is true. Yeah. Supply and demand does work. But the American market does not exist. And that's another show. But I want to bring Tim in, my guest, so that he can make a comment as far as oil and what you had to say, sir.
Well, Egberto, you're 100% right on that. Matt Taibbi covered that really well in the book, and I forget the title, but it's where he came up with that tentacles or the squid or the octopus strangling the United States. But, William...
Are you there, Tim? Okay, Tim's phone may have gone.
William's still here.
Okay, William. Yeah, let's see. Maybe Tim his phone is. Okay, yeah, he's back. He's back. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Matt Taibbi pointed out something that was very important. Whenever the price of oil went up to $150 a barrel a couple of years ago, the newspapers, the media, CNBC, and others said, "Well, it's supply and demand," and China is the one increasing demand in China raised the price of petroleum. But the truth of the matter was that it was financial speculation. There was an over-speculation of the oil futures market, meaning that they had to deliver oil even though there was no demand for it, and that drove the price up. So, Egberto was 100% right. There is no free market for oil. It is contrived.
Don't you think that the price of oil is also going down because of Saudi Arabia providing a surplus of oil into the market?
But Saudi Arabia could always provide a surplus. You see,
why are they doing it now, though?
And that's what I'm saying. We control Saudi Arabia. They won't tell you that, but we control them. And it's like I said in the beginning: Iran, Venezuela, Russia. And guess what? Russia has, for a while, has fallen into place. Iran looks like it's going to sign a deal. And look at what President Obama just said about Nicolai Maduro in Venezuela. I am extremely upset because this is coming from progressive President Obama, who actually calls Venezuela a threat to our national security. Are you kidding me? Now, if George Bush had said something like that, I would have expected it. But President Obama, come on. They
all fell out.
It is ridiculous, William. Is there anything else you want to say, William, before I go to Justo?
I was going to say something about, I believe, like, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and America all working together to fight, of course, like Iran, Venezuela.
Yes.
And the third, and Russia, because, of course, there's the Shia-Sunni battle going on between Iran and Saudi Arabia, the tensions between there. And then Israel and the United States always have each other's back, and then pretty much it's just to choke out the Middle East.
Look,
with the help of Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest sellouts in the Middle East.
William, let me tell you something, William. This stuff about religion, ISIS, and all of it, it's a big joke on Americans. It's a big joke on the population of the world.
Of course,
it is. We fight among each other. We fight among each other on racial basis, ethnic basis, religion, and all these things, while the powers take it all away from us. They keep us fine. Do you think the Jewish, Israeli, rich folks in Israel don't really have great business with the rich Palestinians in the West Bank or Gaza?
Oh, they definitely do.
Thank you. So we are the pawns, and we are the ones, and that is one of the reasons we want to have
the blindfolded sheep.
Exactly. Yes. We want to have Americans and the citizenry informed. We no longer want to be those that are there just being the pawns. But look, I really do appreciate your call, William.
Thank you so much.
And now we're going to go to Justo. So thank you very much. You can hang up on William. Let's go to Justo. Okay, let's see. Remember, we're new engineers. Justo, come on in.
Hi, how are you?
Excellent. Talk to me, my friend.
Hey, guys, I completely agree about what you're saying on Iran. And while I disagree with Obama's sanctions on Venezuela, I don't necessarily think... Hello?
Yes, hold on. We're trying to get a line off. Double hit on the... Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, I don't agree with Obama sanctioning individuals in the Venezuelan government right now. I don't think they're necessarily a laudable regime because, like, I have a friend of mine who is an active participant in the opposition, who would participate in collecting petitions to do a referendum.
Right.
He was blacklisted from jobs, and,
in Venezuela, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And, I think it's unfair to characterize all opposition of Maduro and Chavez as oligarchs,
No, let me tell you, you're correct. And I'm going to bring Tim in this in a second. But first of all, you're absolutely correct. Because Maduro and before Maduro, Hugo Chavez were trying to do what was right to the not to the middle class, but to the poor. This was a country that, I'm sorry, the riches of the country never went to the people. And they attempted to do that. Now, it is true that there is a whole lot of corruption as well. What drives me, and by the way, as to your friend, I can never speak on an individual basis. Individual things that happen to your friend is not, that is not something that is right. However, I can only speak as a foreigner here sitting in the United States in a radio station. I can only speak in the aggregate. And in the aggregate, I would definitely take a Nicolás Maduro over the plutocracy, because the plutocracy has stolen and left its people barren. I can show you the numbers that show that in Venezuela, the standard of living for the lower classes have improved. Did they take that did that occur because of redistribution? Absolutely. Was redistribution right? Absolutely. Do we need redistribution in the United States? Guess what? Phones ring. Yes, we do, because much has been stolen from the American people. Let's look at the oil in West Texas. Let's look at the oil on public lands. You take a look at all these issues, and you find that oil companies take the oil out of the ground that belongs to every single American citizen. And we make zero.
I mean, do you think all the reports about inflation and grocery stores running out are just lies then?
Let me tell you, as Tim, and Tim can speak for himself on that, Tim already said that there is evidence to show that these are manufactured shortages, and the reason a lot of these shortages are manufactured is because they want to get the population upset at those that are ruling them. I tell you, if I were Maduro, what I would do is I would every single company that cannot bake bread, cannot make flour, I would go radical and nationalize them all. Tim.
Well, Justo, I think there is something, and it was reported by, I believe, Roar magazine, or GSD, Global Development Magazine, and the United States Agency for International Development published a paper about how to destabilize Venezuela. And that paper coincides exactly with what is happening now in Venezuela. I think there are a lot of questions that need to be examined before we act upon President Obama's statement. I do not think that we're getting the whole truth of what's happening there.
Absolutely. Justo, go ahead, and I think you wanted to add something else before we go to Bill. So go ahead and make the comment, my friend.
No, that was a pretty fruitful discussion. Thank you, guys.
Look, thank you very much for calling, Justo. It was a pleasure having you on the show. Our next call goes to Bill. Okay.
Marco?
Yes,
Hello.
Bill. Come on in, Bill.
Okay, I would have to disagree with your guest tonight. I think President Obama should use that law. It's like playing poker and getting having one ace in your hand and getting four more aces to use against these radical rights.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And, the second thing is, I think we should be helping Venezuela instead of trying to destabilize.
Right. I mean, it's interesting. First of all, let me let Tim respond to why he believes that he doesn't want to go against the senator. So go ahead, Tim.
Well, I think that we need to hold them up, and it would be nice to just stop at them saying, yes, we have made a mistake. I think, Bill, it's a subjective thing on my part. I'm a little bit more forgiving, or would like them to gracefully exit rather than to have some sort of trial which would gum up the wheels of government for some period of time. I just think, personally, Bill, I know the point, and I'm upset about them, but I think it would just be counterproductive. As a point of law, they made a mistake, but practically in the administration of the United States, I just don't think it would be energy well spent. But I know where you're coming from with it.
Now, let me ask you, Bill.
I don't see putting going to trial. I mean, for him to use it as like cheddar. If I've got this holding over you. If you don't help me do what I need to do, I'm going to start using some of this.
There's one answer that I do have for that, Bill, is that, there was a show that was going before this called The Monitor, and I always like to give kudos to The Monitor with Mark Bebawi, as well as Thinkwing Radio on Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Central. These are great shows that also discuss this type of material as well. But what he said is that apparently President Obama was having dinner with a few people, and they were giving him a hard time. They said, why is it that you don't do X, Y, Z? Why don't you get against the NSA? Didn't you attack the CIA for doing X, Y, Z? And he said, do you remember Martin Luther King? Implying.
Yeah, I remember that. I listen to the Monitor all the time.
Yeah, okay, there you go. And, it is interesting when, he may have been making a joke about it, but a lot of the times I personally, I'm talking about not, somebody on the radio, but just personally give the president, and every president for that matter, a break, because I do understand that they are really not able to say or do the things in a vacuum that they would like to do. It is interesting because last night I was watching, there is this new program on the Secretary of State or something like that on, right? And it was kind of interesting, the subject. The subject was, they were talking about Iran. And they were talking about the CIA behind the president's back was destabilizing Iran, and they had the coup and everything in Iran ready to go. And when the president found out, and I guess he fired the person or whatever, they still went ahead and do it. There's so much within our government that has so very little to do with the president. There's power all over the place. And you have to work. You have to understand that presidents work within the gravity of the institution. And I think as a pragmatic person, I understand that. That's why many times my thing isn't, let's ask Obama to do this. Let's ask the senator to do it. As you know, Tim, one of the things I always say is let's get to the grassroots and let's make things happen. Because it's when the grassroots engage the people power that things will work. You can say there is an army out there, so even if you try to use people power, they just throw the army at you. Do remember that everybody in the army has a brother, a sister, a mother, and if the brother, the sister, and the mother form a part of the grassroots, the army ain't coming. Tim?
Well, I really like what Bill has to say, and I want to synthesize that with what you're saying, Egberto, and that is President Obama could have taken a different road on that. He could have reminded the Senate, he could have reminded Mitch McConnell that you do have a Foreign Affairs Committee, and historically, you've always been welcome to come to my office and tell me what your concerns are, and we can discuss them before we approach a foreign country in our negotiations. And that would have shown that he would have been extended the hand. It would have been a reminder to the senators about what protocols are, and it would have shown the American people a willingness to work together. Really, both sides kind of dropped the ball on this one.
Yeah, now, folks, I need to give a station ID. I forgot completely. This is KPFT FM 90.1. And can you tell me what are our other transmitters?
Yes,
89.9.
You're listening to KPFT in Galveston at 89.5 FM. If you're up in Goodrich, Livingston area, behind some of those walls, you're tuned in at possibly at 90.3. And if you're over near Huntsville, you're at 91.9.
Excellent. Appreciate it. And do remember, folks, we have open lines. The telephone number is 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. Were you saying some more, Tim?
No, I just think that both sides could have handled it differently. It could have been a civics lesson for the Senate, and it could have been a reminder to the American people that polite and constructive engagement is a far better way of operating U.S. politics.
Right. Now, the one thing that I have to say, and and put in what Bill has to say in perspective, is we do need to remember that when it comes to the president and Republican senators, for a long time, I think we've been saying, a lot of people have been saying that, well, it takes two to tango. This guy has 2 more years, or a little less than 2 more years left in his presidency. I don't know that any one of these Republicans really have any desire. If you listen to the news, you listen to them speak, except for I think it's 6 or 7 of them, have any desire to do anything with this president. And it is sad for the entire country because it hurts us all. But as far as what can you do about it, I don't know. I don't know, Tim, what do you do about it?
Egberto, I would take the high road. The president has the bully pulpit, and he can just remind people of what our Constitution is, what our processes are. Unfortunately, he has left himself open to some constitutional violations, but as a leader, he could remind the Senate that this is their role, much as they try to remind him of what his is. You've got to take the high road, or else it's going to be a long, unproductive 2 years ahead of us.
Yeah, sadly, I think the only thing that's going to change the 2 years is a grassroots forcing action on all sides. I don't see these guys taking the adult posture to do it. Bill, what else would you like to add, my friend?
Okay, I'd just like to add this real quick. The Cossacks gave you a real good write-up. I was reading, I get their daily news.
What publication is that?
The Cossacks, the Kos.
Oh, Cossacks. Oh, yeah, Daily Kos.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they gave you a really good write-up and recommend people look at your websites and this and your blogs.
Great, I appreciate that. When did you see that, today?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, in fact, I signed the petition to have the president forgive all student debt.
Yes, let me tell you, it's not an issue for this particular program.
Right.
But I tell you one thing, my friend, that is such a big issue that needs to be taken care of, because right now we have allowed the bankers to really own our kids, our students. It is a lot deeper. What Elizabeth Warren is trying to do, and the president seemed to have jumped on that bandwagon, is a very, very important thing, because actually it is affecting the livelihood of those folks that come after us. And, let Tim talk about that. And if you have anything else, well, I'll come back to you after Bill. Tim?
No, that's okay. I've said all I need to say tonight.
Thank you very much, Bill. You have a wonderful day now.
You too. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Tim. Oh, wait, before Tim. Folks, remember, call-in show. We have open line, 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, with the student debt, yes, that was privatized for a point. Obama brought the financing back within the auspices of the government successfully, I might add. But still, there seems to be a punitive attitude within our Senate and House of Representatives to not try and remediate some of those student loans. And I think Elizabeth Warren has taken a wonderful posture on this, saying, well, how come the Fed can loan to the banks at 0.25%, and the students have to pay, even now, about 20 times that? Surely this nation, for as great as we are, can come forth with a far better solution to promote higher education and the advancement of this nation than the one that we have right now. Obama's taken the lead on it. Elizabeth Warren is way ahead of him. And now we just need to get the rest of this country informed and on board with it.
Right. Now, Tim, before I ask you to go into some of the other stuff that you do, introduce yourself to the audience here, I want to mention about this here. One of the things I think is important is that a lot of people don't know. A lot of people, what you just said, and it is important that people understand what you said. Banks can borrow money at near zero rate interest right now. We are asking our students to pay north 6, 8, 10, 12% interest rates on loans for going to school from bankers that can borrow the money that they're going to lend you at near 0%. And then we call ourselves a moral country. There is something there. 713-526-5738. Again, they're open lines, 713-526-5738. Now, Tim, there's a call coming in. Tim, go ahead and tell the audience, what are the things that you're into?
What our show, what the Tim Danahey.com tries to do is we do a number of things. We talk about government issues while trying to avoid the politics. We talk about world affairs. We talk about history. We talk about social issues, and we also take we also have I believe, and many authors will concur, that one of the finest book shows in the country, where we can talk about any number of nonfiction books that are currently available. We recently talked about Washington and Jefferson's This week coming up, we have another one about data surveillance with Robert Scheer of TruthDig. The week after that, we have a story with Andrew Cockburn of Counterpunch about his book called, and it escapes me, Kill Zone or something like that is the name of the book. I apologize to Mr. Cockburn, but talking about the failed drone policy. And so we cover a lot of things right at the source, and we're very proud. We work very hard on it, and we're so proud to be marching with Egberto and his show, because truthfully, Egberto, your show is an important voice, and not just for Texas, but for this country. You're doing an incredible job, and I'm glad Daily Kos acknowledged it.
Well, thank you, my friend. And I tell you what, I can say the same. I give you the same kudos because, like I've told you, your show has a following right here in Houston, Texas. Okay. I remember when I walked into the studio here, a friend of mine said, "Hey, do you listen to that show on Danahey.com?" I'm like, "Oh yes, I know the guy. We work together." But anyhow, Chris, come on in.
I think somebody earlier, the question was asked, what do you do?
Yes.
And, we protect the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell, my liberal, conservative, if that's the label they like to, put up on themselves, that if you roll the covers back, they're all toasty in bed together.
Thank you.
It's a naive person to think it's a Democrat-Republican issue. And it's a naive person to think, and in as much as those of us who are black are happy to see a man of color in the White House, he's a globalist. Okay, I'm sorry. That's what he is. And George Bush was, his daddy was, his grandfather was, and the next president will be, or they won't last long. And so the question becomes is what is important for us as Americans? Is we have this wonderful, incredible document called the United States Constitution. And if we're able to keep those in power, with their heels dug in and their eyes on that ball, then, we might get a little bit more mileage, out of this place we call America.
Well, let me see if I understand you, Chris, because I don't know if I'm quite following you. Are you telling me that right now, as it is, we're not really following the Constitution, and that's why we're getting what we're getting?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. You take, for example, they're hacking away at it. I mean, there are areas that are solid that has kept this country kind of, on the course,
right?
And that's what's kept us. But they're hacking away at it.
Can I ask you? Tell me something that we should be doing constitutionally that we're not?
Well, first thing is constitutionally we need to really embrace the sanctity of the human, the individuality of human beings, and the sanctity of life, and that is that men, are created equal, and that the whole point of pursuit of happiness, individuality. That whole point. What made this country work? For example, when East Germany fell, and you notice that they were like stuck in a time war with all these old cars, and the West was progressive. You know what the difference was?
What was the difference?
The entrepreneur spirit, individuality, people being able to have free thought, free expression, the ability to think.
Just from your thoughts, I think if I understand you correctly, you probably are you want minimalist government with social policies and that sort of stuff. As I understand you, is that correct?
I think big government has always been intrusive.
Okay.
You look at history. Big government has been a blunder and a failure everywhere throughout history. But when the respect of life, whether it's a village, whether it's a common person, and that person has the ability to march himself.
Let me tell you, Chris, I wish I had, we could have a very engaging conversation, but we're going to be coming up on time right now, and I want Tim to enter the conversation here, but I would want you to call us back. I know that we are diametrically opposed in government and some other things, but I really want to entertain your direction, because I think we could have a very fruitful conversation. Tim, come on in.
I wanted to hear more from Chris on this. He is provoking a lot of thought, isn't he? So, Egberto, you got to have that show. You got to get Chris on there.
Oh yeah,
I think he's bringing some valid points, but I am not one to demonize government. I love government, but I am one to demonize the people when we don't hold our government accountable.
Right.
And that's where our failure has occurred. We haven't held them accountable.
Yeah, but Tim, like I said, I really want to hear from you again. And next time, call earlier, because we could have lasted quite a long time discussing. Like we do on this show. Give you a chance to say your piece. We compare pieces and see, what goes on there. But I really wanted to entertain you, because you're one of the first people that called with this direction. At the same time, speaking in a mode where you could actually have a conversation. So for that, I want to thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
But call back next week. We'll be back on same time again. All right?
I'll do it.
Thank you very much, Chris. Hey, we're running out of time, and I got to give my brother here, Terry, the quick word out. Terry, give me a quick out. Is Terry on? Terry. Okay, I guess Terry is asleep, or he's on mute. Yes, Tim is still on. Okay, Tim, we're going to be closing out in a few minutes, so why don't you give us a closing statement, Tim?
Well, I just want to say what a marvelous show you have. I'm really impressed with the guests that you have calling in. So often Talk Radio has guests that are off the wall. But your guests were certainly high quality. We're able to build a discussion, raise important issues. It speaks well of you and what's going on at KPFT, and you should be very proud of that. It was an honor to be on your show, and hopefully other occasions will arise. This kind of conversation is rare, and it needs to be encouraged, not only here, but around the country.
Look, thank you very much for being with me, Tim, and you know how much I admire what you do as well, so you'll be on again, so thank you very much, and you have a wonderful day. Folks, this is Politics Done Right. I thank you for spending the time with me, and have a wonderful day. Adios!
Thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Williams. You can personally reach me by sending an email to egberto@politicsdoneright.com. Remember, Egberto is spelled E-G-B-E-R-T-O. Change starts with you. 90.1 KPFT gives you information not tainted by corporate interest. Please visit kpft.org and contribute. Let's ensure continued access to real information and news remain available to all. Again, thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right.